Hello, and welcome back to Maya's Reviews, a blog and podcast where I review all types of movies and novels. I'm Maya, and today we are going to be discussing, not necessarily reviewing, but analyzing and discussing Longlegs. My review should already be up at this point, hopefully, assuming I'm on schedule, and today is more just going to be a semi-deep dive into Longlegs, the site, and how it all kind of connects, and more of the plot itself rather than my spoiler-free review, which is already up. Spoiler warning, huge spoiler warning for this video. If you have not watched Longlegs and don't want to get spoiled, this will literally be an in-depth discussion of the plot, the potential Easter eggs, all the theories, the decrypted codes, everything. So just be aware of that going forward. If you don't want to be spoiled, I recommend you click off this video and come back to this once you've watched Longlegs if you want to kind of go more into it, right? So, and I recommend that you watch this rather than listen, right? If you're on Spotify or any device where you listen to podcasts, I will be showing visuals of some of the photos provided in trailers and on the Birthday Murders site that corresponds to Longlegs, along with how to decipher codes and stuff like that. So if you're just listening and you're a little bit confused, come to YouTube and watch the episode instead. That way you can kind of see what I'm showing to the audience. I'll try to keep it easier to listen to, but if you're a little bit confused and you want the visuals, come to YouTube. But yeah, let's get right into this episode. Now, getting right into it, we're going to go through just a little summary of the plot, just in case you've forgotten any details and I've forgotten any details. That way we can remember together. So basically, the movie opens up with what we find out to be is a young Lee Harker in 1973. Now, key plot points of this movie. We have Longlegs, the serial killer, who has been operating since about 1966, I believe, with his first murders. He's killed about 38 people, which is about 11 families. Put on a calendar, these dates of the murders create a triangle. Now, this is important because it connects to the satanic elements of the film, right? Longlegs worships Satan and is killing these families for Satan. We don't know why. That's one of my questions. Basically, every single murder that occurs, the family has a dad, a mom, and at least one daughter who is about 9 or 10 years old and whose birthday is on the 14th of any given month. But the murders don't occur always on the 14th. They occur within 6 days before or 6 days after the birthday. So when put on this calendar, they create a triangle, right? Very, very important. Now, every single crime scene, there's no physical evidence suggesting that there was anyone at the scene besides these families, right? On the website, which I will go into later, they say that the police, right, didn't realize that this wasn't just a murder-suicide and it was a serial killer. The only reason they were able to suspect it was a serial killer was because eventually the FBI put together that at every single one of these scenes, you had a birthday card or a message left that had cryptic messaging and codes that couldn't be deciphered, along with Longlegs signed at the bottom. On the triangle in the movie that Lee Harker discovers is, kind of a code. This is connected to the Bible and Satan and the upside down triangle representing Satan. One of the birthdays is missing, and we find out that that is her birthday. When she was visited in 1973 by Longlegs, he was going to murder her, and he came back to kill her and her mom. But the mom, right, Ruth Harker, ended up trading or making a deal with the devil and Longlegs that in order for Lee to survive, she would help the devil and Longlegs kill other families. We find out that the mom takes dolls that are created by Longlegs that look like these children, that have sort of a metal orb in them containing the devil, to these families. She's dressed as a nun, so they let her in, and these families kind of are mind controlled, and that's how they're able to kill these families without physically being in the house, although the mom does stay for each of the murders. Then we have one survivor, which is Carrie Ann Cameron, I believe is her last name, and she is still kind of in a trance, and we figure out once these metal orbs inside these dolls are destroyed, the people who are controlled by this orb are set loose and able to live, which is what we find out about Lee. Longlegs ends up killing himself in the interrogation. Ruth, Lee's mom, ends up being killed by Lee in order to protect Ruby, who is the daughter of the police chief, who Lee also kills in self-defense. Now, so that's just the major plot points, right? Obviously, there's a ton of other things that happen in the movie. Lee is a psychic, and we discover that because at the beginning of the movie, she and Agent Fisk are going to this house, and she just knows that the murder they are searching for is in this house because we eventually find out, right, is connected to the metal orb and kind of guided by Satan, is basically what I took from that, is that that's how she has those powers. Oh, we also find out that Longlegs, after he came in contact with Lee and Ruth, ended up living in their basement, and that's where he created the dolls. So, those are the major plot points. Now, let's get into the website, because that has a ton more information regarding the actual murders that occur that we don't necessarily see in the movie, but we hear about, and all the different details of that. I will be screen sharing this site, so again, if you're not watching on YouTube and you're just hearing this, feel free to come over to YouTube to see that, but I will most likely be blurring certain photos just because I don't want to get banned on YouTube, even though it's fictional. It's, a horror movie, so let's do that. Okay, so this is the Birthday Murders site, thebirthaymurders.net, right? If you want to go look at this yourself, which I encourage you to do if you liked the movie and you want to see kind of more of the backstory and what you can kind of piece together, because I do think it's interesting. So we have this site that marketing for Longlegs has used. Now, it reads like it's an actual blog following these murders, right? Just giving basic information. Now, here's the thing. There are multiple subreddits, one that's just called Longlegs, one that is called the Birthday Murders, that are following all the updates on this site, how to decrypt different things on this site, and apparently, according to these subreddits, the website has been updated multiple times, right? Now, the homepage of the website reads, "Tune back in Monday, July 15th. That, to me, I am hoping, means we are getting either the announcement of a sequel on the 15th or a trailer drop on the 15th. Because part of me doesn't feel like they would wait to see the reception of this movie to film a second one, right? I'm hoping it's kind of a Fear Street situation where they're able to release them really quickly, because I think this is one of those movies where you need that fan base to still be very interested. Now, let's go to the victims page. So on this, it lists that he has 38 kills, and lists, all of the key factors, right? Another one, that they're very religious. So we have the Applewhite family, and again, I'm probably, if you're watching on visuals, probably going to have to blur a lot of these just because of the content, because it is a horror movie, and though it's not gory, don't want to get banned on YouTube. So we have the Applewhite family. Now, they had a 9-year-old daughter, and they were murdered on July 14th, 1966. My apologies. And you can see they give a lot of details. I'm not going to go too in depth about, like, you know, the murder weapons or everything, because they state in the movie that it's all from their homes, right? But if we scroll down, you can see that they mention a cipher being left with Longlegs signed at the bottom. We head to the Clover family. We can see that they died on June 20th, 1968. So that's a 2-year gap, right? And the first murders occurred in July, and then now we have June. But then we have the Pendergast family. They were killed August 9th, 1969. You only have a 1-year gap between this one and the second one. So we're at murder number 3. Now you have the Wormwood family. They were killed April 18th, 1970. So then just another year, right? Now we're on a yearly basis. And in this one, they mention a car that was seen. Now, if you've seen the movie, which hopefully you have if you're watching this video, this car is the one that we see approach the Harker house when Lee is a young girl in 1973. So this is very clearly Longlegs' car. Then we have the Hess murders. Now, this is in 1971. Again, just another year later, March 12th. So this also has an inverted triangle left, a pink envelope with 666, right? Just the basic satanic thing with these horror movies. We have the Engstrom family, and they were killed November 17th, 1972. Now, this is the 6th murder that occurs, right? And then we have the 7th. Oh, here's a cipher, by the way, that is left. And they mention the Golden Bough, which is on page 187. Now, they don't show this photo here, but they show another photo of the Golden Bough later on. And a lot of it has to do with things throughout the movie that are just kind of left there, but not necessarily said by any of the characters, which is another reason why I have so many questions. But if we scroll down, right, we have another cipher, and then we have the Weir family. Now, this is in 1974. The last murders were in 1972. If you remember, Lee Harker mentions seeing him in 1973. So this is the missing birthday in the inverted triangle, and what would have been the 7th murder is the Harker family. However, the Harker family, as far as we know, their dad was not present, which makes me wonder why Longlegs went after the Harkers in the first place. If obviously, which is mentioned later on this page during a reader's column, right? Obviously, it's always the fathers of these families that are being possessed and killing their families. Major plot point, right? And so it makes you wonder why he would choose the Harker family, especially when it's kind of implied, and you would have to stalk these families to know that they're Catholic, that they're, whatever. But the thing is Lee Harker isn't very religious. Her dad is not present or is not even living with the family. So don't know why Longlegs picked them, but this is the 7th. This would have been the 7th murder. You have the number 7, which is a major number in the Bible and in this movie. And then you have Ruth and Longlegs carrying out these murders, and that's 14, right, when multiplied together, which is the day that these girls' birthdays are. There's references to Revelations 13:1, and 12:9, right, which involve the teeth of the Hydra, the quote where it's like the 7 heads of the Hydra, right, and the devil, and all these different religious things, references to T-Rex songs that talk about the Bible and the devil and the Hydra and Seven. Also, at one point, Nicolas Cage, right, I think this is in the interrogation right before he ends up dying, he says something about Lee being the daughter of the seventh she, right? Which, if we're going according to this website, and this is all of the murders that Longlegs has committed, the Harker family would have been the seventh family murdered. Lee doesn't get murdered, and Ruth ends up helping him. There's also correlations to the Four Horsemen, right? So Longlegs is obviously very pale, and the first horseman is often portrayed as being white, which white is also a whole another thing in this movie, and I'll get to that in a minute. But you have this kind of insinuation that Longlegs and Ruth are not the only ones carrying this out for the devil, because you have the seven she's or whatever, right? And then you also have the Four Horsemen. You have all these different things where there's multiple people doing this. And also it's talked about, right, that Longlegs, in order for him to get the doll into these houses, he has to have somebody trusted go into these houses, right? He refers to himself as a friend of a friend of a friend. Ruth refers to herself as a friend of a friend. There's this chain of people who are helping carry out these evil things for the devil. But, right, on this site, Ruth Harker doesn't get involved in these murders until 1974. Right? She was going to be murdered in 1973, but she didn't get involved and help murder people until 1974, which leaves 6 murders that supposedly Longlegs did by himself, right? But if we're going with the plot and assuming that he's been using these dolls since the beginning, how was he getting them in there if he didn't have help? So that's one of my things for the sequel, is I'm curious to see if there are other people, right? Because Lee even asks, where are the other accomplices? So she thinks there's multiple people. And we'll see later on this website, they do mention potential cults and potential cult followings that could be doing this. So I do think that's very interesting, that Longlegs is probably not, he has more assistance than just Ruth, or he did before Ruth. Because also, where was he making these dolls before he moved into the Harker home? We don't know, right? But anyways, so we have the Weir family in 1974. Now this, we have a page of the Golden Bough left. It talks about the conflict between magic and religion, right? So the satanic magic that he's using in this, and Ruth's appearance as a nun. They talk about priests and sorcerers being combined, and ceremonies and forms of words, help of God or the devil, right? So basically, and I'll get into this later with the color white being used as a metaphor throughout this movie and how that relates to some of the theories about what this movie is actually really about. But there's a lot of references to the hidden nature of people and the secrets that exist in the world. Longlegs kind of portrays himself as this killer, but he physically is not doing any of the killing. He's having other people doing his bidding, just like Satan, right? He's called the man downstairs, and while he physically lives downstairs, could also be a metaphor for Satan. Ruth herself, I'm not sure if she's actually a nun or if she just dresses up as a nun to go to these families' homes, but she portrays herself as a trusting person. And that's how she gets into these homes, is by being good, right? But she's actually very evil, obviously. There's a lot of metaphors throughout this site that connect directly to the movie, and unless you've looked at both, right, you're not necessarily gonna catch on to it. If we scroll down on the Weir family's page, we see another cipher that was left on their fridge. Now this I will get into. There's lovely people on Reddit who figured out how to crack these codes and how to decipher these, and I'll get into how you can do that. I'm not going to go through each of the ciphers themselves because I do think it's important, to experience it for yourself, but I'll kind of lay out how you can do that in a little bit. If we scroll down, we see that after the 70s, right, after the Weir family in 1974, which is the first murder that Ruth would have been involved with, there's a long break, and then it switches over to the FBI being involved in the case, right? So there's the killings from 1966 to 75, but then you have that long break, and then there's nothing, and then in 1987 you have the Bannister family, and again there is a cipher left at the crime scene. You have the Gaddis family, who were killed in 89. Another cipher left. We see that Agent Carter from the movie then joined this case after the Gaddis murder. Then we have the Horn family in 1992. We have this card left with ciphers. You see here at the bottom too, they mention that there's CCTV footage of a strange individual. So while I said I'm hoping there's a trailer dropped on the 15th, potentially I'm thinking we get CCTV footage of this man, right? And this could either be Longlegs or another potential accomplice, right? Because I'm pretty sure the Hess murders, yes, the Hess murders occurred before Ruth became involved. So if this isn't Longlegs that we see on the CCTV footage, it would be another accomplice, which in that case kind of also feels like there's going to be a sequel. This site very clearly takes place before the events of the movie, right? Like, it hasn't been updated. So either July 15th, that date at the top, I think it'll be updated with the events from the movie, or we'll get the CCTV footage, or we'll get a trailer or some sort of announcement or something like that. We go down to suspects. Obviously these are not the killer, right? But it is possible, and I don't think this is likely, but it is possible that Wayne Allen Stump and Oral Wrench, which are the two suspects that are mentioned on this page, it's possible that these are accomplices. I doubt it, because it seems like these people, are people you would assume are involved, right? But the whole point of the movie is you're not going to assume these people are doing these murders. So scroll down, right? There's a reader's column, and on this reader's column, whoever, probably a fake person, asks, how is it that you know so much about this, right, when it's not public knowledge? And the author of this site responds that they've been privileged with access to case files by a contact of theirs in law enforcement. Now, hold on to that, because if we go to the contact page on this, you can see that they provide an email that you can message, but then they also provide an address in Washington, and you can address it to friend of a friend. Now, this is another thing, because obviously Longlegs creates the dolls, right, that help the devil possess people once they get into the homes, but he needs people to help him to get those into the homes. Ruth calls herself a friend of a friend. Longlegs calls himself a friend of a friend of a friend. I'm assuming the friend is just the devil, but if we have other people involved, this could be another accomplice. Don't know, because obviously Longlegs broke into the Harkers' house by himself, but that was kind of a different situation, right? Because the mom confronted him and was like, go away. So a little bit different than what we see later with Ruth helping. And obviously Longlegs was able to get 6 murders done before the Harker family attempt on their life, right? So it's possible that there's other accomplices. I'd be surprised if there isn't, because you have all this imagery with the Hydra and the symbolism of, cut off one head, another grows. Obviously Lee is the daughter of Ruth, and there's a little bit of, I wonder if they're going to kind of take it into the direction where potentially she's kind of taking the place of Ruth in a way. I am interested to see if they do create a sequel, how they're going to continue this movie and the storyline for Lee and Ruby, because obviously Ruby has no parents now. So we'll see. But that's another thing, is this friend of a friend. So we'll see what that ends up meaning, if it means anything. I could be completely delusional right now, but that's besides the point. Now, obviously, there's a whole lot more I could pour through on that site. Obviously, there's the actual, like, stab wounds and everything. Like, they go in way in depth. It feels like a real case, right? But it's not. Which is another thing. They have to give us... After that much time and effort is poured into making this feel so real, how are we not going to get a sequel? You know? So we'll see. But my thing is, a lot on that site and in the movie, they reference the color white. And I said I would go into this. And this kind of ties into some of the theories that people have. And honestly, I think this might be the most possible one of the whole metaphor of this movie, right? Because it has to mean something. Obviously, we don't know why, like, the devil's evil, right? So, but what is the point of completing the triangle, right? We don't know that, and I think that's a question that I really want answered. But on this site and in the movie, they reference white a lot. A lot of the family's houses are white. Longlegs says to Lee that her house was the whitest of them all. White often in the Bible represents purity and innocence. And obviously Longlegs targets families with 9-year-old girls, 9 to 10-year-old girls, right before they have a birthday, so he's stopping that from occurring. Longlegs, obviously being the title of the movie, doesn't really make sense until you consider that he says to Lee when he first meets her that he's put his long legs on, right? Now, people have speculated that this is because it's the name of a cult in this, and they mention in the reader column of the Birthday Murders website that people are asking about, well, is this a cult that's doing these murders? And obviously we know it's Longlegs and at least Ruth as an accomplice. Now, whether that includes other people as accomplices and a potential cult type thing, we don't know. Longlegs, right? People think about Daddy Longlegs, right? The spider. On Reddit. And I'll link all of the Reddit posts and all the people who put this on the internet, so that way I can give credit to the people who thought of this, who are literal geniuses, right? Because there's so much involved in this movie that it is impossible to pour through and get every single thing in one video. And I encourage you to go look on the subreddits for this movie and the website if you are interested, because there is so much that you can probably discover something too and kind of help put together another piece. Somebody on Reddit said that Longlegs share a nickname with other spiders, and they're a part of a certain family of spiders. I'll put the name here because I don't know how to pronounce it. But they're part of that family of spiders, which are cellar spiders, which Longlegs is referred to as the man downstairs, which is also a reference to the devil. So you have just a bunch of things tied together, which honestly, the writers of this movie, brilliant. If you see my review, I was a little bit critical just because there's so many pieces and so much imagery and little things that I'm like, well, that obviously means something because you've showed it multiple times, or it's a thing that you've made sure is in this shot and very prevalent in the shot and present, right? But they don't exactly discuss it, and it's not tied in, right? Because we get the main plot, we understand what and how Longlegs is doing all of this, but there's so many things that are in this film, and I want to watch it a second time to see if I can kind of see more things too. But again, so many things that it feels impossible to kind of piece it all together. I'm not sure how they connect, which is one thing I think I want to see more of from this movie, is connecting those things to the main plot, because otherwise it feels like, why did you put that there? On the website, for example, they mention the red pianos that a lot of these girls have. I think each of them have a red piano. When Lee is going through her psychic test, she says she sees a piano, she sees a door, she sees mother, she sees whatever, right? Tiger, I think. And on the site, there's a tiger magnet that holds one of these ciphers to the fridge, right? So there's a lot of things that are just connected in this film, but I'm not sure why. That's one of my things, is I'm hoping we see more. But back to the white metaphor. Longlegs, and I promise this connects. Longlegs, he says, I put my long legs on. He's obviously a grown adult at this point. He's taller than the child. And I think other people have pointed this out too. Long legs is a metaphor for growing up, right? You grow taller as you grow older, and he's obviously stopping these children from growing up, but also Lee Harker does grow up, and she grows long legs, right? She has, because he says to her too, I think you have your long legs on, or something like that. That kind of refers to growing up and losing your innocence of the world and the terrible things that can happen in it, right? And so I've seen a lot of people talk about how this, and the houses being white, and being kind of sullied by the murders that take place in them, and the dirt that he refers to, long legs, right? How this could potentially be a metaphor for sexual assault, and also tying in the religious elements, how there is dangerous people that get power in religious groups and take advantage of that to take advantage of people and children, and how, right, Ruth lets Longlegs move into their house and live under them, and just knowing that he is he preys on children and kills these families, right? She knows that, she helps him, and Lee grows up in this home not knowing, right, that she has Longlegs literally living in her home. So that could be a metaphor for the for parents who ignore the abuse that goes on within their religious groups because of their devout religious beliefs, which obviously not to be critical of religion as a whole, because there's obviously great people who worship Christianity and Catholicism, because Catholicism is the main religion that's targeted in this movie. But I think that is potentially something that this movie is being critical of, is the abuse that can take place when people get into these positions of power. And obviously Longlegs too is very pale, white hair and everything, but it's kind of just like, it doesn't feel right. Like, it feels like he's wearing a costume, right? Again, kind of like a wolf in sheep's clothing. So I do think that was very intentional, mixing the metaphor of white as innocence, and then the red, right, of the piano potentially being, and obviously the blood of these murders kind of taking away these children's innocence of the world, and, possibly being a metaphor for sexual assault. So I've seen a lot of people talk about that, and I think that is probably the most reasonable deduction from this movie, because I don't know what else this could mean in real world terms, obviously. So also on the site, a lot of the times they have people who knew the families, right? Obviously fake murder case, but people who knew the families talk about how they would have never suspected this because there was no abuse going on in the home and all this. And oftentimes stuff like this, people who actually do kind of just snap Unfortunately, people don't recognize the signs beforehand. So I think that's another criticism from this movie, is just we're not aware, or we don't care enough about the world around us. Now, moving into another kind of theory, but more something I just noticed and probably a lot of other people noticed. Obviously throughout the movie, there's silhouettes of Satan shown. Sometimes you're like kind of sure you see it, but you're not entirely sure, and I'm honestly not 100% that when I was seeing it, it was actually there. There's some very obvious ones, right? Once it becomes more apparent that the devil is kind of a main driving force in this movie. But early on, when there's a lot of just blank space, and they kind of make you think that Longlegs is there, but I'm wondering if there were silhouettes of Satan there instead, and we just didn't notice it because we're looking for a pale man creeping in, which freaks me out. Ew. I don't like thinking about it. I go outside now and I go, oh, if Nicolas Cage shows up, I can't do it. Obviously, so there's that, but then again, we have the Hydra and 7. 7 potentially being the number of accomplices, right? Because you have Longlegs, or instead of 7, you could have a Four Horseman type deal, with like the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. If you watched X-Men Apocalypse, you kind of know what I'm talking about. But obviously the first of the Horsemen often is associated with white, but also often associated with the Antichrist. So if we're to believe that that's Longlegs, the other 3 could be helpers. But then again, we have Nicolas Cage's character, Longlegs, talking about, well, you're the daughter of the 7th she, which makes me kind of believe, like, oh, is Lee supposed to kind of carry this on? Is that why the devil allowed the deal to be made? Because obviously it's like, why, if Longlegs has other accomplices or didn't need Ruth's help necessarily because he's committed 6 other murders, then why would the devil allow this deal to be made? Unless there's a reason for needing Lee or Ruth alive, right? So I kind of think that Lee is meant to be the next accomplice or helper of the devil, right? Because Longlegs says, you know, I'm everywhere now, which also could be referring to the dolls, because not every single one of those dolls has been destroyed. And if they were all hidden like Carrie Ann's doll was, then it's possible that that's what he is referring to, is the dolls that are just scattered throughout Oregon. If I'm pronouncing that wrong, somebody please tell me, because I have genuinely no clue. But there's all of that, and I'm curious to see if they do make a sequel, if they make Lee kind of have this temptation to be sort of evil, because there's so many pointers to that in this movie. So there's also the inverted triangle, which obviously is formed by the birthdays and the order of the murders and everything, right? But I've seen somebody point out this could mean, right, the 3 sides, one being the devil, one being Longlegs, and one being Ruth. Obviously, we don't have Ruth or Longlegs anymore. So the devil, I think the whole point is, cannot be defeated, because at the end of the movie, Lee runs out of bullets and is unable to shoot the doll that resembles Ruby. So Ruby's still kind of under this trance, which essentially makes her kind of like a young Lee, and Lee kind of like a Ruth that's not as evil, you know? So I think there's interesting parallels there, and I'm curious what they're going to do with that from now on, if they are going to continue and make this a series, which I said so many times that I hope they do, but I really, really hope they do, because I want to see more of this, and I'm hoping it'll make me like this movie even more. Okay, so I'm not going to go into each individual cipher and what each of those means. I'll link the Reddit pages where you can see some of these things, because I don't want to just put everything here for you to see, especially when I didn't personally decipher each and every one of these, right? I went through and I deciphered a few, and I went, that's a lot of work, and it's 3 a.m. and I'm trying to put this video together and I need some sleep. And then I didn't wake up till 3 p.m. So not doing that again. But I will put onto the screen the potential like chart to decipher these, and I'll leave this up for a little bit. I'll also link a photo of this. There was one photo that I found, but it was very difficult to read, so this is the best I could see of it. And I rewrote it, so that's what this is, and I'm hoping it's okay to read. And again, I'll link everything and how I found all of this down below in the description, whether you're listening or watching. This whole chart, each symbol correlates to a letter, and when you translate the ciphers that are found on the website or in the trailers, it's obviously not going to make much sense. It seems like just a random jumble, except there's a cipher decoder, and I cannot for the life of me pronounce this, but this is what it's called, and I will also link this decoder down below. And you have to use LONGLEGS as the key, right? Don't ask me how these work. I looked up how this decipher works, and it's just, oh my god, I've never been more confused in my life. I took AP chemistry, and this is more confusing. Basically, you can take this and just use this to go through all the different codes that they've put out and try to piece it together. A lot of it is, there are some that were in the movie and you already kind of know because Lee's figured them out, but stuff from the trailer or stuff from at the bottom of the site, right, the birthday murders, there are files that you can download, and that you have to, they're zip files, so you have to have a password. There's also more ciphers and codes to figure out, and each of these leads to a password for the next zip file, which contains more photos. I will put a link below that has all of the files actually already unzipped and unlocked so that you can see the photos if you don't want to put in all the work. Somebody very nicely uploaded those to Reddit. Love the internet. So you can see all of that, which is very helpful if you want to see more of the photos that are not on the Birthday Murders website, right? It's just more difficult to find them. Let's go through the Golden Bough, which is the pages that were left open that were mentioned on the site at the crimes, right? And let's just go through, because we've already gone through page whatever 200 something, but let's go through 187. This page discusses just a bunch about like children and afterbirth and just a bunch of stuff I don't personally understand, but it references a lot to a child. And if you go to other files, and I will show these hopefully on the screen, it's if I edit it correctly, these will be on the screen on my YouTube video. So again, if you're listening, come watch, but I'll try to read too. We have this page that is page 187 from Golden Bough Contagious Magic. But then if you go to another one of the files that you can access through unencrypting all these and whatever, tons of stuff I don't understand. If you go to this, it talks about the word ardatu, as has been explained above, always implies a marriageable woman, and this use bears further testimony to this. In one of the magical texts, the sick man is described as one whom the Ardot Lily has wedded. In the explanatory text K156, mention is made of the Ardot Lily that has no husband. Now, I'm thinking this is probably Ruth in reference to Longlegs, because it says, a restless ghost that wanders up and down, forced by her desire to roam abroad, unable to rest quietly until she is satisfied. She therefore appears to have the spirit of a woman, such as that which came to tempt St. Anthony, and is probably she who gives birth to the Alu, or devil, half human, half specter, while the Lilitu, although the female counterpart of the Lilu, was less human in its characteristics. These were the principal spirits, but they formed only a single class of the powers of evil which might attack man. Witchcraft, sorcery, the evil eye, which cast a baneful glance, the evil tongue, which let fall a minotaur's sword, and the evil man were all foes where the exorcist had to meet. The evil eye is a very real terror to the Oriental, and is even personified as a demon in Syriac charm. So then that page ends, and that to me is talking about Ruth and Lee. Because it mentioned a child being born, but it's half human, half specter. And obviously, Ruth has no husband that we know of, right? We've never seen any dad in their household besides Longlegs. And unless Longlegs is Lee's father, which I highly doubt they're going to take it that direction, I'd be surprised. It kind of implies that potentially that's why she, out of all these people, had these powers, because obviously Carrie Ann also survives the attack on her family, but she doesn't necessarily have the same psychic-ish powers as Lee, which makes me feel like there's probably something different about Lee, and maybe that's why the devil allowed this deal to be made. But then we have page 77 of, I think, continuing on this text that talks about prayer. It's a prayer against the evil spirits. Lee's mom, Ruth, mentions prayers throughout the movie. But this prayer follows incantation, 7 are they, 7 are they, in the ocean deep, 7 are they, battening in heaven, 7 are they, in the ocean deep as their home they were reared, nor male nor female are they. They are as the roaming wind blast, no wife have they, no son do they beget, knowing neither mercy nor pity, they hearken not unto prayer or supplication. They are as horses reared among the hills, the evil ones of throne bearers to the God are they. Now this, to me, right, again, mentioning 7, we have Longlegs and the devil and Ruth, and he says to Lee that she's the daughter of the 7th she. So this to me is like, oh, there's 6 others, including Longlegs, right? And it says, no wife they have, no son do they beget. Again, all these families have daughters that are murdered. It mentions horses, 4 horsemen, evil ones. They're serving the devil, these evil spirits, and there's 7 of them. So, and there's also mentions of, right, the I stand upon the sand and see the Hydra or whatever, the 7 heads rise from the sea. There's tons of this biblical and religious demonology, like all this imagery that's all kind of combined together. So to me, this means Longlegs and Ruth were not the only ones working for the devil. And if that is the case, that Lee is meant to take on her mom's evilness. There's another page that we see that also mentions the same prayer, the invocation against the 7. So obviously very important, because these are in 2 separate files that you can find. And again, it mentions the 7 are they, 7 are they, but then we have a little bit more that mentions of these 7, the first is the south wind, the second is a dragon with mouth agape that none can withstand, right? So clearly there's other people who have been involved in these murders, which again, leading back to the site where it mentions people questioning about, is this a cult? Is Longlegs just a cult that is carrying out these murders? I really, really think, because again, they also, at the very, very beginning of the movie, reference a lyric from T-Rex that talks about teeth of the Hydra, right? And obviously the Hydra, you have the 7 heads, you cut one off, it grows back. Anybody who's watched Marvel knows this. So I think it reminds me a little bit of, I think, is it Fallen, the movie, the thriller from the 90s that, you can't get rid of the devil and it's going to keep coming back, and how Lee is going to deal with that. I've also seen people connect a lot of Longlegs' murders and patterns and stuff like that to stuff with the Manson family. And I do think if we are getting sort of a cult type plot point in the next movie, if there is a next one, I do think that's interesting, and they are probably pulling from that a little bit, and I'm curious to see how that's going to kind of connect, because they obviously talk about the Zodiac Killer in this movie because of the ciphers and the codes and everything. So we'll see. There's just so much going on with this movie, just in the movie itself, and then you add in the site and all the ciphers that have been put out as part of the promotion for this movie. There's so much, and I've tried so hard to find as much as I can to put into this video, to make it as concise as possible. There's so much, okay? Bear with me. Now, there's also some of the files, once you're in the zip files, right? Once you put in the correct passwords, which I haven't even begun. Okay, there is so much going on. But apparently some of these files, right, I believe in the latest one, the second to last, one of the last two, the files spell out Revelation 12:17. Now, there's a lot of references to Revelation throughout this movie. So, but Revelation 12:17 quotes, then the dragon became furious with the woman and went off to make war on the rest of her offspring, on those who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus. And he stood on the stand of the sea, referencing the devil, clearly. Like this Reddit post. No idea what any of this means when all put together, but I'm thinking it's probably just a big metaphor for the purity of children and the evilness of the world, and how we don't protect children in this world, right? And obviously how the devil cannot be defeated, and it's going to continue to have people helping it carry out its actions in this movie. There's also one of the folders within the files that you can download contains 2 cipher documents. Somebody translates them, and one is translated to the name of the star is called Wormwood, bow all the way down to the metal guru, work that gets dirty as it cleans like a bloody mop, like a rag. Now, this references to the Bible, again, also in Revelations, or is it Revelation? She corrects something in the movie, and I haven't gone to church in a long time, but Metal Guru is a song by T-Rex. There's a lot of references to that. Wormwood is also the name of one of the families that were murdered. And in Revelation 8, the third angel sounded his trumpet, and a great star blazing like a torch fell from the sky on a third of the rivers and on the springs of the water. The name of the star was Wormwood. A third of the waters turned bitter, and many people died from the waters that had become bitter. There's also 7 trumpets as the judgment of the 7th seal in Revelation. There's just so much to do with Revelation. When you put all this together, at the end of the day, do I know exactly where it all leads? No, not at all. But it is fun. And I'm really, really hoping that with how much has been put into this movie and the marketing and the website that corresponds to this movie, that it's not just going to be the only thing that we get. Because again, there's so much here. It feels crazy to me if they put this much thought into everything, because do you know how much of this connects? I felt crazy. I was sitting here at 3 a.m. and I'm going through all this, and I'm writing these notes. I have my walls, they look like, right, because I have my whole setup. I have my ring light, I have my laptop, I have whatever. My wall above my laptop, it looks like an FBI. I have ribbons, connecting, or string connecting that's how I feel right now, because I have pages and pages and pages of notes just from the basics of this. I barely even went that deep. Okay, this isn't even a deep dive. This is a skim into the layers and layers that is Longlegs. And for that, I commend the movie and the producers and Neon for making it this fun. Please, though, make a sequel, because I need to... do you see what I mean? With how much is in this movie, with how much has been put into it, there's so much that I'm like, well, how does all of this connect? Like, I need the movie itself to connect these pieces, because obviously we have the main plot points, we have some main things, but at the end of the day, how does it all connect and form this whole story? What does this mean for Lee? What, does this mean for Longlegs? Are we getting a prequel maybe instead of a sequel? Don't know, but we will see. I don't know. I'm hopeful that we'll get a sequel. Hopeful. Probably not going to, honestly, which will make me very sad. Anytime I hope for a sequel, we never actually get a sequel. And then every movie that doesn't need a sequel gets a sequel or prequel. So, we'll see. But I will hopefully be able to update. If there's any more information that you guys know of or have seen and want to let me know of, I'm honestly... as things get uncovered and revealed, I might make another video, because there is so much in this movie and in this, like, universe. So, we'll see. But, yeah, and I will link everything that I've been talking about below in the description. Even if you're listening on Spotify or Apple or something like that, I will make sure to have the links in the description. And if something weird happens, or you want to see the photos that I've been showing, just head on over to my YouTube, which is just Maya's Reviews. You can just look up, I think it's at Maya Grimley or something. I'll link it. But that way you can see what I've been talking about, because again, if you want to decipher the codes by yourself, I have the alphabet uncoded and the link to the Cipher decoder. Shout out to all the people on Reddit who put this together, because there's not a piece of me that wanted to stay up longer than I had to try to piece this together. No thank you. It's crazy, dude. Some of this stuff is crazy. That is the end of this video, my semi-deep dive discussion analysis of Longlegs. And I will update if we do get something on the 15th that I think is worth sharing. So, but thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please like, subscribe if you're listening on YouTube. Follow, leave a rating on Apple or Spotify if you're listening on there. Check out my blog, Maya's Reviews, at mayagreviews.wordpress.com. You can find me at Maya the Bookworm on Twitter, BookBub, Book Sirens, Goodreads. You can find me on Instagram at mlgrimley or Maya Grimley. You can find me on Tumblr at Maya Reviews. You can find me pretty much anywhere. Okay, just look up my name. But yeah, if you enjoyed this, thank you so much for watching through what is probably going to be a very, very long video. But hopefully it was worth it. And if you haven't seen Longlegs yet, I don't know why you watched this whole video, but you should definitely go see Longlegs. And I encourage you to try to decipher some of these codes by yourself, because I did a few by myself. It's very, very fascinating, and I'm sure you have more willpower than I do to get through more of these codes. So, but have a nice day and go watch some Longlegs.